While this podcast will cover information about how to access therapy and other mental health services, it is not intended to be a substitute for said services. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you feel you are in need of mental health assistance, please seek out licensed professional care in your area.
Not that type of therapy podcast. Hey everybody, it is Mental Health Quest. This is our episode on therapeutically applied role-playing games. I am Charlene MacPherson, LCSWC.
And I am Benjamin Tice, registered psychological associate and psychology doctoral candidate.
Woo! Again, this is our second episode in our treatment series, where we are going to be covering different types of treatment for mental illness that work best with each one of the diagnoses that we talked about in the series before. So that's what we are doing today.
And today we have a very special guest. Like, it took hours of negotiating to get this person to come onto our show. I was on the phone with like big wig people and everything like that. They made me feel really insignificant. You know, there were lawyers involved. I can't keep this going on. Our special guest today, everyone, is Charlene.
Me! Yay!
So we are doing this awesome episode on therapeutically applied role-playing games because that is literally what Charlene does for a living.
Yes, I do.
And so we thought, what a perfect way to kind of continue on from our discussion about superhero therapy and geek therapy from our last episode in this series, and kind of go into another geeky thing, which is role-playing games. More specifically, what game do you play?
Oh, more specifically, role-playing games. So games like Dungeons and Dragons. There are a few other games that I'm trying to gonna integrate as well as I learn them, but mostly role-playing games.
Awesome. I had only ever played D&D one time. It was literally the week before we went into lockdown. Like, it was like 4 days before.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. I got a nat 20 on my first roll.
Oh my goodness.
I did not know at the time what that meant. And people started screaming, and I freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Everyone started like cheering, and I was like, yay. So for our listeners, what does a nat 20 mean?
A nat 20 means that you rolled the highest number you can on the dice, which is like an automatic success. And so it's the best number you can roll. And so when it happens, and of course, you know, it's only one dice on a 20-sided dice, or one part on a 20-sided dice, so probability, you know, says you're not going to roll it that often. So when you do, it's really, really fun to kind of see what happens.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot of fun. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. My character was a paladin. It was like a pre-made like character sheet that they had like for new players who were joining in. Every so often I'll go online and I'll take those like personality quizzes and be like, oh, what D&D class are you? And all stuff, and it keeps changing on me. But like,
yeah,
so I don't really know who, like, which one do I like really kind of identify with. I'd like to think that I'm like, you know, a wizard or something like that. I'd like to think that because I'm very wizardly.
Yes, of course. I main a bard, and maining means that I play a bard, and it's my favorite character that I've played is called Brip from Brippenstein the Third. And he sings for his instrument, for his barding. But he's a frogman.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So the singing isn't that great. But I
He
just
loves it anyways, and that's all that matters, people.
Exactly.
As long as you love it, then it doesn't matter what other people think about your singing.
He loves it so much, it still inspires his teammates, even though it sounds like this.
So I guess we need to kind of take it a little bit from the beginning to explain to our audience what exactly is therapeutically applied role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says in the name, but what is it and how does it work? Like, how do you go about this? How did you find out about it, actually? Let's go there.
Yeah, so that's usually the first question everybody has is like, how did you put therapy and D&D together? And I'm like, very, very good question. So I've been playing D&D since 2004. That was 3.5 is what I started with. I don't know any 3.5 rules. I literally just started playing. Because people are like, oh, which one do you like better, 3.5 or 5e? And I'm like, I only know the rules for 5e, so I don't
know any rules. I just was there and just throwing dice around.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you really don't need to know. As long as somebody at the table knows what's going on, then you're all good. But I've been playing since 2004. Fell in love with it, because it's so much fun. And then I continued to played a few other systems. Call of Cthulhu is one of my favorite as well. It's a horror-based system. When my son was like 1 or 2, I found a DM that on Roll20, which is, by the way, is a place where you can go find a game, some people running games online, and you can join. And so free? Yeah, it's free. Some of them are paid for, you have to pay for, but a lot of them are free as well. This was a free game. I jumped in. It was a Call of Cthulhu game, so that was a lot of fun. But I've actually stayed with this DM and really kind of attribute a lot of my style and success to Naomi. Shout out to Naomi for teaching me how to DM and giving me kind of the confidence to DM.
You're saying DM, and that sounds like Mucinex DM. Is that what we're going for now? We're going into cold treatment?
Yeah, no. DM is Dungeon Master. That's the person that runs the game. Or you can call it a GM, which is a Game Master. So if you're using other systems other than D&D, you say Game Master. Dungeons and Dragons is the Dungeon Master. But I stuck with Naomi, and we played a D&D game, and it was my Brip game that I just talked about, my character. And I had a little bit of social anxiety around the game because I didn't know the players in person, and we were just doing voice. And sometimes I talk a lot. That's why I do a podcast, because I like talking. I have ADHD. So I was like, oh, am I talking too much? Am I, do you like my character? Like, I don't know, and I tend to be a little bit of a chaos gremlin when I play as well. So I was really unsure and having a little bit of anxiety about, whether they liked my character or not. Then we took over a ship, a pirate ship, and we had to figure out who the captain was going to be. And, immediately everybody turned and said, Britt needs to be the captain. That kind of was a shock for me, because, I was having these kind of doubts, this social anxiety about, whether I was playing okay, whether everybody liked me, stuff like that. And then they turned around and was just like, Britt needs to be the captain of this ship. And I was like, oh my gosh, you like me, yay! And that was probably around 2016 or 17. And I was like, you know what? Everybody who plays Dungeons and Dragons pretty much already knows that you put your shit into your character anyway. um, and that, anxiety comes up if you have anxieties, stuff like that. I was like, this would be really good for therapy. And so in 2017, I started looking around, and there weren't a lot of resources. As a experienced therapist, and just as a starting off therapist, do no harm is our, first ethics goal. You know what I mean? I didn't want to do something that I thought that nobody was talking about or doing or whatever, because I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to, hurt anybody or, not be good or whatever. So I kind of sat on it for a few years, and then I found some resources. People started coming out with some actual modules, which are like the one-shot games where you can sit down and play in one session that had to do with mental health. Take This came out with one, and it's called Gardens of the Fog, by the way, everybody. It has allegories in there for anxiety and depression. It's and they have the Psychomancer is actually a class that you can play in that, which is really neat.
That sounds like
Yeah.
something I would like.
Yeah, it's
Psychomancer, Magic of Psyche.
mm-hmm.
I'm wiggling my fingers, everybody. I'm doing magic.
You have to look at the Take This Psychomancer. There's another Psychomancer that someone else made up, and it's a lot different, but basically the Psychomancer is the therapist in this, kind of story. It was really cool. Yeah. And so in 2019, I interviewed for my job at the college. And in the interview, I told my boss, I looked my boss straight in the face and my coworker and said, I want to run Dungeons and Dragons therapy groups. And there was a pause. And then there was, okay. I was not expecting that at all.
Love it when your supervisors are supportive of you.
Yes, it was very nice. And, the specific college I was at, they knew that the students played Dungeons and Dragons a lot. So they were like, they will go for that 100%. And so that's when I started groups, was in the fall of 2019. And the rest is history, I guess.
That's honestly just such a really cool story, because you didn't know, you didn't go into it thinking, okay, I'm going to do therapy with this. You just went in, I'm going to have fun playing this game as a frog person. And you felt the kind of the therapeutic benefit for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why people stick with their whatever fandom is, whatever their geeky interest is, whether it's D&D or anime or whatever. It's because mm-hmm. they feel validated from that community, from that experience. And definitely with role-playing games, because you're interacting with other people, it's kind of built in, mm-hmm. That you're going to be validated by mm-hmm. another human. Hopefully they're human.
Or, Aarakocra, a big bird person, or a giant, or whatever. You never know.
Exactly. But you're getting validated. And I just honestly think that that's really cool. And when I first started, getting interested in the whole geek therapy, mm-hmm. superhero therapy, nerdy stuff, I did not know about this, but everywhere I looked was mm-hmm. role-playing games. And so I was working at the psych hospital at the time, and I had, I'd gone to some training about superhero therapy with Dr. Scarlett, who was our guest on mm-hmm. the previous episode. Everybody go listen. After I put together a psychoeducation group format for the hospital using the superhero therapy model, I was looking into other things that we can do. There was a recreation therapist there who played D&D, he knew D&D. And I was I had just read about mm-hmm. therapeutically applied
Yeah.
D&D games. And so I was talking to him about it. I was like, we should totally like do a
Yeah.
D&D group here in the hospital. We didn't end up getting to do it. There weren't really enough patients that were interested in it.
That's the
And
hard part. Yeah.
our supervisors were like not sure how, like, because it was a psych hospital. People have delusions
Yeah.
and hallucinations, and you have to be very careful not to like trigger or exacerbate things. And talking about orcs and magic and stuff, you
Yeah.
never
Yeah. Yeah.
know. So we didn't end up doing it, but I had like read about it and I thought it was really cool. And it always was something that like I wanted to learn more about. I honestly don't know if I would
Mhm.
do it because I don't even know how to play the game
Yeah.
myself. So that would take me a while to like learn how to play the game, then learn how to be a
Mhm.
DM. I just want to learn more about it. I don't think I want to
Yeah.
actually run
It's a
the group,
lot.
but so a lot of therapy modalities like superhero therapy and geek therapy do complement with currently
Mhm.
existing
Yes.
therapy modalities like CBT and whatnot. Is there one that complements really well with the role playing games?
So, when I took my trainings with Game to Grow and Geek Therapeutics, I'm certified as a therapeutic game master. Yeah, that's a thing, guys. I am a certified therapeutic game master twice over. The main kind of idea that they had was, whatever modality you are comfortable with, whatever modality you use just for therapy, that's the theoretical background you should go through, whatever you're comfortable with. And while I tend to be more cognitive behavioral, so in this sense, what we're doing is identifying therapeutic goals, mental health goals, social skills goals. And something that was always frustrating for me as a therapist is going over social skills one-on-one with a client. And it's like, usually people don't have any problems with social skills one-on-one once they become familiar. It's in a group, right? So like, it would always frustrate the heck out of me that I'm trying to train this person and get them to do things outside of therapy that have real world consequences. Like if somebody needs to set healthy boundaries, like if their boss is taking advantage of their time for some reason, saying no, I'm not going to do this project has some very real world consequences.
Just the slight ones, really.
Yeah, so I wanted to create a safe space where people could try out these new coping mechanisms in a place that didn't have real world consequences for them in a group. So that's kind of the theoretical background I come from is that okay, we identify cognitive behavioral goals, different ways of thinking, different ways of acting, things like that, and then you go and you practice them in the group through D&D because again, it's all social. It's all you're on a team, you have goals, you need to work together, like all that different kind of stuff. So I'm doing more research on ACT. I'm not quite as familiar with it as I'd like to be, but I'm taking training on it. It seems to be very applicable as well here. So learning that more and becoming more comfortable with that as well. But mainly it's whatever theoretical background you tend to be comfortable with as a therapist.
For our listeners, ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy, and it is a very helpful type of therapy to help people understand and manage emotions, particularly anxiety and trauma. It is actually a type of modality that was incorporated into the superhero therapy training that I did with Dr. Scarlett. She actually has like it kind of mentioned in her book, Superhero Therapy for Anxiety and Trauma, which is like a great book,
Yeah.
by the way. I'm just playing Dr. Scarlett, and everywhere I go, um, I'm really just a fanboy. I'm just
Hey, aren't we all? Yeah.
I really like that you are kind of the thing that Well, let me rephrase. How old are your clients? Is it only for kids, or can adults do
Oh
this
my
too?
gosh. So this is the question. I don't even get asked this question. People just assume that I work with kids. Cuz it's a game. And this is something that I am actively trying to change. It is now my life's goal to change the world in this specific area where um playing for adults is important. So most of my groups have been 30-year-olds plus. Um, I had my college kids play, but they were at the college I was working at, so that's why they were that age. But when I put groups together, a lot of them are 30 plus. And if you look into, and again, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, or if you find something, please send it my way, research wise. There is zero research on social skills, social interaction, and things like that from age 30 to geriatric therapy. So from age 30 to about 60 or 70, there is zero research. There's research on learning, there's research on, that type of stuff, but nothing on play or social interactions or anything like that.
It's really sad because that people just assume that 30-year-olds know how to
Yeah.
socialize. I'm 31. I'm not so great with the
Yeah.
socializing.
Same.
It's just what I have to deal
Yeah,
with people.
exactly.
But it's actually interesting. Is there's also for our listeners, I'm gonna plug my own stuff in here. Is my current dissertation that I'm working on is on examining the effectiveness of geek therapy modalities in building rapport with clients. And as part of my literature review, I was looking at all the different research that involves geeky
Mhm.
anything slash
Mhm.
therapy. And so I was looking at a lot of research about role playing games in therapy, and obviously came up about social skills, but all the research was with
Mhm.
kids, was with
Yep.
teenagers. Like there was, I think, one article about college age
Yeah, there's
students.
a couple. Yeah.
Really, like all the research about using role playing games as a social skills modality training was more for children and adolescents, which is all well and good because if you train them young, then cool. But there are adults in the world right now that struggle with social skills, whether it's just a function of their upbringing or maybe they have just different experiences with social groups. Maybe they are twice gifted, as you say. They're
Yeah, well,
neurodivergent.
and that's what I
um
was going to say is like there's a lot of people in their 30s and 40s who are getting late diagnosis neurodivergent diagnoses, so ADHD, autism, things like that, and then there's absolutely no social skills groups or anything like that for those people, those age people. And I'm one of those people. I got diagnosed with ADHD at 35. And so, ADHD does come with some social skills, you know, uh, things I have to work on. And there's absolutely nothing except for individual therapy. And again, when you're working on social skills, group is probably going to be more effective than 101, right? So, that's also another reason why I chose to focus on adults in my private practice, was because I felt like it was an area that wasn't being appreciated or explored very much, and how important play is for me just as a person, playing Dungeons and Dragons or any type of board games that we have, or playing with my son, or whatever it is. But play, especially with all the stuff that's been going on recently, COVID, economic crises, wars, all that stuff. This is a way to cope. This is a way to, have a little fun to be able to go back out there and deal with the real world stuff.
During the pandemic, like you mentioned the online
It
D&D games,
exploded.
those became massive during the pandemic. There were so many different options, for people to still be able to, get together and hang out and play games together. If we can have, if we can have watch parties, we can have all these ways for us to still, connect. Those are all adults
Yeah.
doing that. Those weren't all
Yeah.
kids. There were a lot of I saw on social media, I saw on Reddit and all Twitter and all this stuff. A lot of adults were seeking out these kinds of games, seeking out these kinds of online groups to help them connect
Mm-hmm.
and socialize during the pandemic. It is something I feel really beneficial for adults because social skills for adults is different than for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Children and adolescents, their social skills focus more on school
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of environment, which is great, and definitely we want to help them learn those skills for that
Right.
environment. But if growing up, the only social skills you learn is that are designed for a school-based environment, what happens when you grow up and you have to be in the
And you're
workforce
no
and
longer
you
in
have to go to
school.
work
Yeah.
and you're not in school anymore? If you have coworkers, you have supervisors, you have bosses, you have customers, depending on, what you do for work.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a whole different type of social skill. And honestly, that was one thing that I struggled with
Mm-hmm.
a lot. When I left school and started working, was how do I
Make friends.
make friends with my
Yeah.
coworkers? And I was able to, but like for a lot of people, the workplace environment can be very scary, and they don't know how to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable and make friends like that because it's like, oh well, they're just my coworkers, they're not my
Yeah.
friends. But they can be both.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I almost want to do like a D&D game where the scenario is you're in a
Mm,
workplace environment.
You totally could, and it kind of is, if you have a bounty or you have a job that your group was hired to do, and you don't know the other characters, they all were just hired, to do this job, then you have to figure out how to work together, how the team works together best, how to synergize, how to work off of other people's strengths, and things like that. And that's automatically built into the game.
So, in addition to social skills, what other challenges and mental health issues can be treated effectively using therapeutically applied role playing
Pretty
games?
much, I haven't found a symptom from, a diagnosis yet that I haven't been able to integrate. So, anxiety, standing up for yourself and your boundaries, setting healthy boundaries, trauma. We don't recreate the trauma, but maybe again, that person needs to be able to set healthy boundaries with friends and family and things like that, or be able to not have to be the one in control of a situation or leading a group, can pull back and be kind of a secondary character when they're usually trying to kind of take control of the group. There's anger. Yeah, I've worked with anger issues and trying to figure out how to process those. I actually had I had a NPC, a non-player character, betray my person with some anger stuff, and so they had to work out how they were going to handle this person's betrayal. At first they just wanted to, obviously in D&D, attack everything, but eventually by the end of the game we were able to forgive them, not forget, but forgive them, and try and bring them back into that character back to who they used to be, as a supportive type of person. So there's all sorts of things. social anxiety, I had someone play the opposite of themselves. So they played a loud, boisterous, entitled royalty when they, don't really talk that much, in their regular life. They don't interact a lot. And they played this loud, boisterous character to kind of try on what that feels like and how people react to it. So, and with ADHD, it's a perfect place for ADHD because when you have ADHD, right? And again, like I said, I have it myself. You're always told that's not how we do things. We like to think outside the box. We like to be creative. We like to, find a solution to the problem, whatever it is. And we don't necessarily have to follow a procedure to do that. In the outside world, that doesn't work. So you're usually told, you have to do it this way. You have to fill out this paperwork. You have to do this. But in D&D, you have to be creative. You have to be, the more creative you are, the better fleshed out your character is and the more fun you have. And so it reinforces that creativity and that, ability to think outside the box. So you can integrate it with anything.
I really like the idea of, learning this kind of problem solving skills for anger, for, like social kind of environments, because that is something that a lot of clients that I've worked with in the past and currently work with struggle with is it's not the big problems that they can't solve. It's the little ones. Like, how do you react when, someone, was holding the door open for you and then they closed it before you got there?
Yeah.
Seems like a very minor thing, but it affects people. And some people get really mad. And they cast fireball.
I didn't ask how big the room was. I said I cast fireball.
Yes. So I like the idea of being able to like allow them to explore different ways of solving these different social problems, these relationship problems. One thing that I focus on a lot with my clients is identifying cognitive distortions, which for our audience are basically thinking errors. These are thoughts that we have that they feel good to us, and they allow us to do what we probably should not do. Like if we get upset at somebody, the thinking error is, well, he looks at me wrong, so I'm allowed to punch him. Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or, we rationalize things, we justify, we minimize.
Yep.
And that's what all humans do. But the key is learning how to, when you recognize, wait a minute, that's my thinking process. Well, what else can I do in this situation?
Yeah.
How else can I
And that's
react?
the
How else can I
creativity part
respond?
of D&D. Like you don't want to just respond in D&D when you role play. You want to be creative. You want to that's the part I love about it. You be silly. You have, one time we were fighting some people on the ocean as I was Brip again, and I threw somebody threw a trident and it stuck into the side of the boat because it had missed. And I was like, I'm a frog person and these people are all on a boat. I'm going to flip the boat by pushing on the trident. And so I flipped the boat by pushing on the trident and got all of the bad guys in the water who had armor on. And so they just sunk to the bottom. So like, that's the part about it that I love is the creativity that you can have to be like, okay, this is a safe space. This is a not huge consequences place, no real world consequences. How can I act differently in this moment that I would otherwise? And I can do that because it's a safe space and I can try it out and I can try to be the person I would like to be or, just try anything else out different than I would in everyday life. So that's the innate, part of D&D is, trying out different things, and I love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because we want creativity and problem solving skills in life because there's always another way that isn't readily apparent, like flipping the boat by pressing on a trident. Um, like you're saying you were telling a story, and I'm thinking,
You're
okay, the
like,
trident is there,
all
so
right, where are you going with
okay,
this?
good now. Like, yeah, exactly. Like I could not think of the solution, but in life we are always faced with problems, and we miss
Yep.
when we throw our
Yeah.
tridents. And so we have to be creative in problem solving, but we also have to be able to look at the situation and be able to be like, okay, if I respond this way, how is that going to affect the people around me? And if there's one thing that people struggle with when they're working on problem solving skills, it's that. Like, well, I did it for me. Oh, yeah, cool. What about your family? What about your friends?
Right, right. How did it affect them? Yeah.
Yeah, because we do have an impact on the world around us, and so I think that's also a really good way to give people that sense that they have influence in the world when, like you said, the world is filled with, war and destruction and everything. Like we feel powerless. So how do we allow ourselves to feel a sense of control in
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
uncontrollable environment?
Yeah, and so like, usually I also get asked, besides like um, what theory you use as a background, but like how do you do this? Like literally, how do you take D&D and what's the process look like? And the way I do it, I found out to do it, especially with adults. In my private practice, is I actually have them identify mental health goals, social skills goals, whatever goals they want to work on, right? At the table. And they know that everybody at the table is working on something, right? So it's a safe space in that sense as well. And then I have them create a character and keep their goals in mind while they're creating the character, like picking the class and the race that they're gonna play. Sorry guys, it's called a race. A species of person that they're gonna play. The main part that really is important for my games, my therapeutically applied role playing games, is taking those goals and putting them into the backstory of the character. So whatever the character's motivation for adventuring is, what's their goals? What are they trying to do? Find a way to kind of work in your goals in those specific instances. And then I actually take that backstory and I create the campaign. So I basically homebrew an entire campaign around all the group members backstories and their goals that they're working on and things like that. So it's very personalized to them. I don't really use a lot of pre-written stuff. And then we play the game, and the game itself creates opportunities that I don't recognize until we get there as well. So it's kind of it's amazing to watch. It's amazing to kind of see.
Oh, I'm curious, from a purely professional question, not nerdy at all. You say that you use the client's therapeutic goals into building the campaign. Like, how long does it take you to build a campaign? How do you mesh? Because working with groups is always a challenge because you have to balance so many different issues. So how do you blend everything into one campaign?
So mainly what I do is I start with the story. I look for through lines with usually my groups are around 5 people. I look for story through lines or themes that are similar in each person's backstory. And then I will go through and be like, okay, well, one campaign was like, okay, and this is just the story base, not anything clinical. There were a lot of missing kids in the history of these characters. And I was like, okay, well, why are there so many missing kids, or kids that disappeared or whatever? And so I used that to create the storyline, the main storyline of the campaign. And then, created opportunities within that campaign setting for each one of the characters. So I just sit down and I look at it and just be like, okay, like how do these fit together story-wise? And then once I write the story, each encounter I'll write, I'll sit down and I'll either spotlight one of my players, so I'll make that encounter about their backstory specifically, and create opportunities for them to make choices and use those different skills and things like that within the encounter. So I come up with the overarching arc of the campaign through their backstories. I come up with 3 mini arcs, and then I come up with the encounters specifically for each person as they move along the campaign.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. So I actually, and I've been kind of, it's not perfect yet, perfecting the system. At first, I used pre-written stuff, and it went okay, because I would let them add things into it, and I would create opportunities and things like that. And then I did the homebrew thing. But I did the homebrew thing week by week, because I was like, I'm not going to know where these people are going, like, in the story or whatever. And then this time around, I gave myself about a month. I got everybody to give me their backstories a month out, and give me some time to be able to write the campaign and the encounters and things like that. Now, are those encounters going to stay the same? Probably not. They're going to shift, because as a DM or anybody that runs a role-playing game knows that, kind of have to follow the characters. It's group storytelling, so they may not end up where you want them to end up, so you have to adjust. But writing all those the main bones out, and then following the characters wherever they end up, and the players wherever they end up. It is a lot of work, but it's so much fun.
I mean, it definitely work, but it also sounds like you're there's that saying, if you love what you do, then you're not doing work, right?
Exactly. And I mean, it is hard work, and I do, sometimes I'm like, I need a break. That's why I built in that month, because I was like, okay, I can't be doing this every week, and then, while you're at the table and you're playing the game, anybody that's been a GM or a DM, knows that it's complicated enough, because you've got to remember the rules and the monsters and the hit points and who's going where and maps and, all the things that you have to do as a GM. And then you have to add the therapy into it, right? Into the encounter. So you have to make sure you do that pre-work. And then you have to be on your toes, if you see an opportunity pop up as the players are playing, utilizing that opportunity to help them kind of respond and process and use it as an opportunity to practice whatever goal they're trying to do. So it is a lot of moving parts, and then trying to run the business at the same time. And have individual clients on top of it. So
yeah, sounds like a whole campaign just to plan the campaign and
yes.
everything.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that I really want to establish for my program specifically is, coming to group, but also coming to individual therapy with one of the therapists that's sitting at the table helping the campaign. So I'd like to have 2 therapists. Right now it's me and my intern, my health and human services intern. And that they have been a blessing, because again, like, this is a lot of work. And then having individual therapy on top of it once a week with one of those therapists to process what happens in group. Has it been helping? How do we shift if we need to? What is your growth arc for your character? What is your growth arc? How do we make them similar? And then the everyday stuff that you do in individual therapy. So it doesn't have to be all about D&D. So, that's kind of how I see it running in the future, is kind of as a program. Once a week you go to individual therapy, and then once a week you have group, so that you just get the full benefits out of both individual and group.
And as I think we did mention in previous episodes that therapy can be beneficial when you're doing different things, like individual plus group, or or therapy plus medication. There's always ways to kind of expand the experience. And this sounds like just a fantastic way to expand therapy to a whole new level. And so I really want to thank you for sharing with us your expertise and nerding out with us about D&D and role playing game therapy.
Yep.
So that, I think, will be where we end this episode. But this is a perfect opportunity for you to plug your company.
Yeah, I was gonna
Go for it.
say, so we usually do the plugs at the end of the podcast. You can find me at Nat20 Therapy, so NAT20 Therapy, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My website is www.nat20therapy.com. And my email is info@nat20therapy.com. So you can see the running thing there. My company's actual name is Nerd Adventure Therapy 20, which you were talking about the Nat 20s first off here, which abbreviates to Nat 20, and that's the whole reason why I did it.
That's a perfect reason.
Roll a Nat 20 in life.
And for any listeners who might be close to you, what areas do you serve?
Yeah, so right now I'm just licensed in Maryland. I'm hoping that the social work what is that called? The social work contract goes through with compact goes through some other states, so I might be able to do virtual in other states, but right now it's just Maryland area, and my groups are in person. So I'm around the BWI area, the Baltimore Washington International Airport, and that's where my office is. So if you're around that area and you're interested, go to my website, fill out the interest form. I'll be there. Finger guns. Yeah, you all can't see the finger guns.
The finger guns means business.
That's right.
Well, I will just plug this podcast. Just please follow us on Facebook, and Twitter at MHQ Podcast, MHQ capital P Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. You can email us if anyone has any questions or suggestions for future episodes. You can email us at mentalhealthquest1@gmail.com. And I'm thinking we should probably create an Instagram also, but we can get to that another time. It shouldn't be too difficult. But for now, Facebook, Twitter, please like and review us on iTunes or whatever platform you are listening
follow,
to. It really help
all
us
the things.
to reach new people and new listeners. So please rate, review, share us with your friends. And we look forward to talking next time.
Yay!
Enjoy your quests.
Bye, everybody.
Also, that's the reason why our podcast is called Mental Health Quest, because of our D&D stuff.
Quests. Who wants quests? Quests. All right, everybody. See ya.